Thank you so much for joining another edition of Interchange. My name is Mohith. I'm a developer advocate here at Salesforce, and I welcome you all to this session. And today we have a special guest here, Phil from our community. Phil, thank you so much for joining, and welcome to Interchange. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Hi Mo, yeah, I'm Phil, as you said. I work for a partner, an ISV called Serenum. We were actually recently acquired by Bullhorn, who are a staffing software company.
Wow.
What Serenum does is we provide workforce management products and solutions for enterprises on the Salesforce platform, with a focus on sort of hourly workers and the gig economy. I've been a fan of Salesforce pretty much since I started working on the platform, which was only actually 4 years ago. But it's quite amazing what you can do with it.
Thank you, Phil. And Phil, thank you so much for your contribution to Stack Exchange community. I see you always there, and I get a lot of inspired by reading your questions. And sometimes I see you also post questions and answers. That's awesome. That shows your spirit of sharing all the knowledge that you are acquiring with the community, and cannot thank enough. So with that, Phil, what are we going to talk today about? So today, we're going to talk about one of the questions that you posted on Stack Exchange. And of course, you posted the answer yourself. So this caught my attention. And, I went through this question. And this is one of my favorite topics of, Experience Cloud, which is the Experience Bundle metadata and all of the related metadata. So we have this question from you. Tell us a bit about this question. Why did you sort of posted this question? And packaging up of experience bundle, I've not seen a lot of customers do it. So what sort of prompted you to go and publish something like this?
Sure. So the prime reason basically was we, as an ISV, we wanted to be able to provide a starting point for providing actually the workers in the end a way of managing their work.
Okay.
But we wanted it so that our customers could actually tailor that experience, right? So we provide a managed package that's on the App Exchange. You can install that, which is great. But when you've got a managed package, anything that's in it, apart from a few things, like the layouts and stuff, you're quite restrained as to what you can do. Yeah.
Right.
With an unlocked package, we can basically allow people to change anything they like. But what's great about it is that you can install that package on top of our App Exchange package, and you've already got something that works, right? So in order to make it so that we can sort of share that with each of our customers, we needed to be able to package it. We wanted to use a digital experience. It's the right sort of technology for the types of user that we actually have.
Right.
So we'll have lots and lots of workers, lots of people actually wanting to access their schedules and find work and all that sort of really interesting stuff.
Right. So sort of a workforce scheduling and workforce management kind of solution.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly.
And
Yeah.
you brought up a really interesting point. Is okay. So you have this already managed package, but on top of that managed package, you wanted to provide something, which your customers can install and then customize. And that's where you thought, okay, instead of providing the whole metadata where they have to run through the scripts, or let's say, providing them the instructions to manually click and set that app, you're providing an unlocked package, which is a second generation technology, 2GP. Basically, it's a second generation packaging technology that allows you to even package those kind of metadata, right? So you're providing that to your customers so that they just go with a link and install it, and after
Yeah.
that they customize it. Okay, that
Exactly.
that all makes lots of sense. So digital experience, I know that experience bundle is the core metadata, but when we look at that, there's whole set of dependency around it, right? and not everything is sort of packageable. So I was really interested in reading out this question and answer from you, where you kind of did some research and figured out yourself, like, okay, which metadata the whole digital experience sort of works with. What are some of the dependent metadata related to the experience bundle? And then if you're packaging it up, now, one thing I want to mention before we go into packaging is you cannot package a digital experience with a managed package today, like the experience bundle. That's still not supported, but we do support unlock packaging for experience bundle. But there's like ton of metadata that's not supported. There's ton of metadata that's supported, right? So there's a bunch of metadata, and we have to figure that out. And I've seen this question come up many times, like, okay, which metadata do I need, to package? Which metadata do I need to just put it in the version control, and I shouldn't be putting in the the unlock package. So I thought this was an interesting research from you. So really, I suggest all the readers to actually find Phil W on Stack Exchange, and we'll also share the link in the description of the video, and also look at this question and the answer from him. It's a wonderful piece of research around which metadata you can package and which metadata you shouldn't package. If you do, your packaging doesn't work. And we will explore that as we go into the demo. Phil, do you have anything else to add on here?
So I wanted to just draw out the fact you mentioned it's the experience bundle that's the core. And that's relatively new, isn't it?
Yes.
You used to have this thing called a site.com metadata item, but that's sort of a binary blob. And what's great about the experience bundle, actually, it's a structure of JSON. So you can actually look to see how the whole of the site fits together. It's really, really quite interesting to look at anyway, as a sort of another little exercise. But the fact that you've got that old site.com, that was what started me sort of hitting problems, because I didn't know, am I supposed to use this? Right. What's it for? And all this sort of stuff. And there's not a lot of good documentation around it. And I just wanted to make sure that got shared. The learning that I had was shared.
Yeah, thank you so much on that, actually. And we have beefed up the documentation, so do look at the documentation as well on specifically the metadata items and all the properties that we have. But I'm pretty sure, Phil, at that time when you wrote that answer, there was not a lot of good resources. But the experience bundle, right? It's the site that you have, right? And then the experience bundle basically has different things like branding sets, the configurations, the routes, that means which page and navigation, and then the themes that you're using. The views are your actual pages of those experience cloud site. So all of that is a metadata itself. But then we also have related metadata, like for example the experience bundle here, like if I open one of the views here, right, it is a knowledge article detail page, which is depends on a feature like knowledge article to be enabled in the org. And similarly for if you look at some of the things, let's say I'm using a flow, right? So in that case, I just point out my LWC component or a standard component. And what the experience bundle metadata does is it just creates a reference. That's it, with the ID, like with the components and the ID. So it creates a reference to those. But those actual metadata is not part of the experience bundle, but they are other metadata. Like for example, we have some classes here to build this experience cloud site. And then we have some static resources that are required, some objects that we modify, and then network, right? Network is the metadata, the core metadata for the experience bundle. So if you are deploying an experience bundle site, you need network and the custom sites along with it.
That's right. And what's really fascinating about that is that there's stuff in here. And again, when I first started looking, this was really confusing because there's stuff in here which is org specific.
Yes.
So you've got the specific subdomain, which basically is like the part of the URL for your site.
Yeah.
But that's okay. You can package it.
Yeah.
It just gets ignored when you install that package.
Yeah, and that's a feature, right? That's an
Mm.
amazing feature that those things get ignored. Now, one of the things Phil would want to do is actually do a little bit of hands-on and see and work out this whole process of packaging, so that folks who are not familiar with running packaging get an idea from us and how this thing works. Now, one specific file that I want to go through, and in order to make this work with a scratcharc, I had to do I had to figure out, okay, what features this my Experience Cloud site needs and what settings. And you see, I have bunch of settings that are required for this
Mhm.
site. So, for
Mm.
example, we need knowledge, as I said. My specific agent portal. So this is an agent portal, basically. And this portal, right, has a knowledge article component and a live agent component, like we're using the live chat. So that needs to be enabled for this. So that's why that is very important, like, to figure out those features and settings. Otherwise, you will probably not be successful in packaging it up, because what happens when the packaging runs is it first creates a scratcharc and tries to compile your code against that, and there are features in those scratcharc that needs to be enabled for some of the metadata to sort of deploy, and
Yeah.
that is very key aspect here. Like, if you just have the metadata and try to package, probably will not be successful. And Phil, one of the things in your answer clearly shows is, you also need to find out those settings that you need, because otherwise
Yeah.
it will complain that you don't have permissions to this or you don't have permissions to that. So how about we do this little exercise of, creating a scratcharc
Hmm.
and deploying this first, because I think that is the key, right? We need to make sure that the entire metadata that you have can be deployed,
Yeah.
right? And that's the first step. Um,
Yeah. Absolutely.
so yeah, so let's do that. So really, Command Shift P, and we say create a scratcharc, and again you have to provide the definition file that I just showed,
Hmm.
and let's say a demo org or something like that here, and because we're just working for today, I'm just gonna say one day and just create the scratcharc. Okay, so it's gonna take some time for you to create the scratcharc, probably
Yeah.
a couple of.
So what I was going to actually say is that
Yeah.
obviously what you've already got here is a project, and you've got lots of metadata.
Yes,
Of course, that means you've already pulled the metadata off an org at some point.
that's
Um,
true.
and using SFDX pull, you're going to get it all in one project directory.
Yeah,
Or
that's an interesting
directory.
question around how we pulled this metadata, and it's
Mm.
really an interesting exercise. So what I did is, and this is the steps that I would recommend if someone is actually trying to pull that experience bundle out of the org along with the dependent metadata for the experience bundle, is to create a chain set, or let's say unmanaged package, and just add the network metadata and say view all dependencies. It'll give you all the dependencies that are there and say add all the dependencies. So you add first network metadata, and then it just adds everything else, because that's how the whole dependency chain starts. It starts from that network. It then spiders out saying, okay, the network depends on site experience bundle. It gets all those things, and then it says, okay, the experience bundle has a reference to, let's say, an LWC component. It pulls that. Let's say that LWC component has a reference to an Apex class, so it pulls that. So I was able to use that technique to get everything up, right? Or you can use
Cool.
the org browser also. Like, the org browser is a tool in SFDX itself where you can pick and choose. But
Mm.
generally, manually doing this is gonna be, you will be missing something, and you will just do a trial and an error sort of functionality to
Yeah.
find out, okay, what is that whole package that just compiles fine. So that's an
Mm.
exercise. It's an exercise in itself.
So is that something that you can actually do on a Scratch org itself if you created the digital experience on a Scratch org?
That's a really good question. So on a Scratch org, I don't think so. You can actually do so in a Scratch org. You have this sandbox source tracking enabled, right? So the
Mm.
moment you create a digital experience, you try to add a LWC component or Apex class. it's going to track that these are the components that you're modifying. And when you
Mhm.
run that SFDX force source pull, it's going to definitely pull out that. But the reality is a lot of our customers are either on Sandbox or on the production org to begin with. They're
Mm.
not beginning their project on a scratcharc. Of course, if you are doing a new project on a scratcharc, it becomes relatively easier at that point because you're not pulling any metadata out of it. But imagine, you already have an Experience Cloud site and you're trying to now create a package for that, or pull the metadata, or let's say you've used site.com till now and you want to use Experience Bundle. So
Mhm.
those kind of things, I think, requires that technique that I was talking about earlier, like you use the
Yeah.
change sets and you add all the dependencies and pull it out. But if you're starting a new project, if you use a sandbox with the source tracking or a scratcher with the source tracking, it's baked in for
Mm.
you, and a source
That's
pull will give all the metadata.
right. Yeah. So I wish I realised there was that sort of opportunity to do that sort of approach, because when I did it, it was very much trial and error. I was doing it from a scratch org, but the
Okay.
reason I didn't use just an SFDX pull.
Yeah.
And the reason I didn't do that is because I was getting too much stuff and I was having problems.
Right.
Um, but
Okay.
basically, I think now my answer sort of tells you these are the things you can ignore anyway. So
That's
you
really awesome.
can use that. If you're not able to start with a change set, I think you're right. You can use a pull.
Yeah, and one thing remember is to use this enable experience bundle metadata. And Phil, you
Mhm.
do point me to that thing in your answer as well. Like, make sure you enable experience bundle metadata, because if you do not, then you cannot retrieve that experience bundle. So that's a very,
Mhm.
very important step. So that's why you need this setting here. Um,
Mm.
and these are all specific to my experience bundle site that I have, like the experience bundle that I have, these dependencies. But you might have different, and that's something that will be like step one to figure out what features and settings and the metadata that you have, right? Figure out all those
Mm.
interdependency that
Yeah.
you have.
Yeah.
Anyways, I think we have the scratch arc ready, the demo arc, and I'm gonna just try to do SFDX for source push here, to push this everything to the scratch arc. Let's see what happens. Always fingers crossed on this. It doesn't go well. There's a lot of metadata here, and I'm really curious to see what happens, in terms of the deployments.
Mm.
As you can see, I'm using the 53.0 version. I really wanted to make sure it's on the latest version.
Mhm.
So now what will happen, I believe, is it should go fine, but we never know. There might be a surprise for us, and it will be nice if there is a surprise, because we can go through the troubleshooting together here.
Right.
So there you go. So this is one of the errors actually that always happens. Like, looks like the default navigation is already in use. Enter a unique name, and this is because I think what happens is when the experience bundle like sort of gets created, there is already a default navigation, and we are trying to push one more, and it says there's this duplicate thing, right? And it's
Mm.
very common error. This one is very common. In fact, I think we should notify the product teams on this. I'll take that responsibility of going back to the product team and talking more about this. But these type of issues are actually easier to fix because we have this force.ignore, where what you can do is you can really get to that navigation menus like this one, and say, give me the relative path, and just put the relative path in here, so that next time it excludes that navigation menus,
Mhm.
next time when it does the deploy. So let's actually push once again, this time without that thing. So what's interesting to me is, oh, there was something that is interesting to me. It still says 21 components. I don't know why. Well, let's see if it actually goes fine with this time. So remember, it's a brand new arc. So,
It's now made it 20 out of 20.
oh yeah, there you go. Okay, so now it went fine. As you can see, it went fine. In fact, we can open the org and see the experience bundle here. So I just open the org, and I know the experience bundle here. So we can go to, it's called digital experience now. So
Hmm.
if you are typing communities, it's called experience digital experience. Sorry. So now, Phil, the
Yeah.
other thing is to publish this, right? So without publishing, this won't, um, without publishing, this won't basically show up, right? When I actually go and say, okay, I want to view the site, it's going to go back and give me this no
Yeah.
longer message.
Yeah.
And this you can
Yeah.
also do it from the CLI, I think. There's a command to publish it.
Hmm.
If you want, you can, like say publish here as well. So that was it to get this thing going in the scratcharc. Obviously, there are parts that I skipped, and one of the core things that I did as a homework was to figure out that scratcharc JSON file. There were a lot
Yeah.
of hurdles for me to actually push these metadata, Phil. Like initially, when I
Mm.
when I pushed it, one of the errors that I got was, the one of the views here. Like for example, when I go back to my networks. I think not networks. I think it was experience bundle. And when I
Yeah.
went here and there was one file, this one article detail, it did not get sort of pushed to the scratcharc. It said this is
Mm.
because I don't have permission to do anything with the knowledge. So I realized, oh, my scratcharc doesn't have knowledge articles.
Mm.
And then when
Mm.
I was tempted to go and check that checkbox in the scratcharc, like really I was tempted to go here and kind of do this thing, go here and say, um, I think now it's not gonna show me that option because it's already enabled. But really I was tempted to go and say enable knowledge, right? I
Mm.
think it's
Yeah.
called articles now, or anyways. So I was tempted to go, and there was one more thing called like chat. I remember there was a chat setting, and I had to go, and I was tempted to do this enable because it said the live agent, it cannot deploy the live agent
Yeah.
because, okay, so it said that we cannot deploy the live agent because this checkbox was not checked. So I was tempted to actually go and check this, but then I realized, okay, now I can go and check it. But what about the org when when the packaging happens, right? When the
Mm.
packaging happens, it will definitely create an issue for me because at that point, definitely like at that point, I'll not have access to that org to go and check this box. So I had to figure out the setting, and that's what I was saying, that this file becomes so critical before you package it up that you go here and you have to go back here and say, um, where was the chat one? So this one, live agent settings, and I had to go and say enable live agent true, and then this was not needed, but I think it made sense to have quick text enabled. Anyways, I wanted to show some more settings, apart from
Yeah.
just that one too. Okay, so now that we have, right, in an ideal world, we should be able to create, right, for that we should be able to go just create an unlock package out of this whole metadata that we have, including the email templates and the components, the
Mhm.
classes. I should be able to go ahead and create it, right? But let's see what happens, and that's
Yeah.
where
You,
I
you,
came
you hope
across.
so. But yeah. That's. I think you're right. Again, it's one of those things where let's try it and see. Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. It's always experimentation. But one thing I found helpful was this one, like the metadata coverage report, right? I think I
Mhm.
think it has all the details, and all the metadata types. I think there are 470 metadata types now. So it tells
Mm.
you like, okay, whether you will be able to unlock package it up or not. There are certain things which are not supported here, but I think it's
Yeah.
always makes sense for someone to try it out before sort of just assuming that everything will work as it is, right?
Yeah.
um,
Absolutely. And what I really like about the metadata coverage report is that you can look at it for different versions of the platform as well. And
yeah,
you can see the evolution and how much more you can package now than you used to be able to. It's really interesting.
awesome. Yeah. um, Excellent. So let's just try packaging it up, and when the packaging happens, this thing becomes a very crucial, right? The sfdx project.json, because you have to indicate the package directories here. If you do have a default directory, then it
Yep.
becomes really easy, and you have to provide some namespaces. That's other thing that you need to be careful. I generally
Mm.
don't recommend to go namespaces with unlock packages, because there are things like flows that can come in your way. And Phil, I think your answer also has those details
Hmm.
of what would happen if we are supposed to namespace it. So if it's an unlock package, it's just good to just use the unlock package as it is. So we'll go and create that package. So I'm gonna go back to my terminal here, and let's actually bump this terminal a bit more, so that this is clearly seen. Okay, so now what we want to do here is we will say sfdx force. It's pretty simple actually, package create. Although I would love some time for SF to catch up, like the SF executable, and not having to type these much of commands. But for now, I'm just gonna type, because that's all we have. So it's usually this. Our help is pretty good. The examples are good, but
Mm.
I think this should work. If I copy paste this and just change the package name, maybe we want to call it as package name could be, let me call it as something like an agent portal or something like that. Okay, so let's create one. So I'm already authenticated to the dev hub, Phil.
Hmm.
Just to give you a context, I'm already authenticated to dev hub. So I have a dev hub from where I can easily sort of create a scratcharc, and then I was able to create this package. So as you can see now, the package would have the package ID, right?
Yep.
And the versions, right? It automatically sort of set version 0.1. That makes sense. And
Hmm.
the package name, right? The next step is obviously to do the package version, right? sfdx force package version create, and then do a help on this. Okay, so here's where actually one of the things that we need to make sure is to also provide that definition file, right? And none of our examples actually show, but if you don't provide the definition file, then it's not going to apply that whole scratch definition to that
Mm.
scratch arc, and your packaging will fail if you actually don't do that actually. So
Yep.
everything else we should be able to pretty much do everything else here. So we just copy. Of course, I don't want to keep the. Uh, we'll use this one, sfdx, the third one, because we know the package ID now. So our package ID is here, right? And then so our package ID is there. Then we want to skip that password thing. I generally don't
Yep.
recommend for production
Mm.
purposes have a password, but today I want to skip it because this is not a proprietary or private package. We're just playing with it, so it's
Mhm.
totally okay. And then I think the important thing here is to provide that definition file, right? If you don't provide that, it's obviously gonna fail. And if somebody wants to try, please do try out with not providing the scratch definition file. It will go ahead and fail. So what we'll do is we'll copy the relative path for that.
Mhm.
So that's the definition file. Yeah, so it does look good. Let's give a shot with it. And it's gonna take some time, right, Phil? It does take some time to create the package, because what it's gonna do behind the scenes is so what it's gonna do is it's gonna first initialize, and then the next step it will do, as you can see, will be verifying the metadata,
Mhm.
and it's gonna create now it's verifying the features and the settings basically, because it has to go create an arg behind the scenes, like a scratcharc behind the scenes, and then it's going to deploy all of the stuff that we have, and then it's going to start packaging it up. So let's see.
So on the password protection point, so for ours, because this package requires our core package, because it extends it, we didn't need to provide a password because you can't use it without our package anyway. So it depends on the use case, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. I think it depends on the use case. And so now it's verifying. So you see, it was verifying the features, but now it's actually verifying the metadata.
And for me, this step takes a very long time, because when it's creating that sort of build scratch.org, it's got to install our package and everything as well.
Okay. So how long does your like the creation of the package takes place?
So that takes about 25 minutes to install our package. So it then takes, I don't know, probably a further 10 minutes or so to do all of the other stuff it needs to do in getting that sorted out. So it's not quick.
Okay, no worries. So here it is, Phil. So we have this whole thing, and it did error out here, unfortunately. I say these entities are not supported, custom brand. I think these type of, so you have actually documented in your research here, like which metadata cannot be packaged. So network brandings and sharing sets are the ones that you've identified. Now, I want to caution here, there might be more metadata, and this might be Phil's your project, but somebody might be using something like CMS or any other new tools and new metadata. So there might be a possibility that those things also do not package along. So how about we actually exclude that and repeat the packaging process? So notice this force ignore file. That's so handy, right? And what we can do is we can just copy the relative path and then just add in here. Now, one thing I want to mention here is, now you still want to deploy these network branding, etc., to those arcs, and that's where Phil, you were using a strategy, right, where you had one more folder, which was not something that you would package it up, which is not your default folder, but you'll have all other metadata there, and you can use the other tools to actually publish it, right? You can install the package and then run a script which can sort of deploy that.
Yes.
Okay.
Indeed.
Okay. So now,
in fact, so I was just going to say the other reason for having them in a separate sort of source file, source tree, is that you can still deploy it to your scratch.org while you're developing your digital experience further. So they're there. You've got them. So you've got your network branding. It will quite happily push to your scratch.org. You just can't package it. So, as you said, I just added literally a second source folder.
Something like that. Something like here, and you would have said like unmanaged package or unpackaged or something.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then just add that as another package directory. In the SFDX projects JSON.
Here. So, here, right? So where you can add more project.
Exactly.
Okay. That's an awesome thing. And let's actually now try to sort of run through this, right? So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna go back and attempt the package creation once more. This time with obviously ignoring that network branding. And it was really difficult for me to figure it out because the error was not that clear. I would have expected the error to say something like network. I think it's called network branding, but the error said like entities are not supported, custom brand. That's what it said. But anyways, it had a brand in it, and I was able to look at it up. And thanks to your answers here. So remember, even sharing sets will have those limitations. So this is an excellent read for all the readers out. I definitely recommend go read this question and answer. Okay, so now that we have this, right? So let's just run once more. So now it's again verifying the features and the settings.
Yeah, while it's doing that, there's another thing which it seems like you can package, but they don't package, which is profiles. I can't remember if I mentioned it in my answer, but
yeah,
I've got them there, and the build org that's
yeah,
used for creating the package, it will quite happily accept them as being as part of the source tree, but it doesn't package them. Yeah.
got it. Yeah, and one more thing I would like to point out is your emails. So this is something I played around with it. Now that will also go and package it up, but when you try to install the app, your org will already have those email templates, and unlock packages, because they don't have this namespace a lot of times, most of the times, it'll go in conflict with that. There we go. So let's actually check the version create report again to see if it was successful this time. And it is actually. So you see, we have the package, we have the installation URL. So somebody can just install this fine in their org. So that was it. That was it for showing a demo today around how you can package up Experience Bundle. And again, I wanted to sort of thank Phil for doing all the research here and sharing with the community. Now, one question I have, the last question to you, Phil, is what are some of the considerations? Now, I'm packaging it up. I have got the packaging URL, and I'll go and sort of install that on my production org, or let's say sandboxes. What are some of the considerations that one has to take, specifically in an environment where there are low code developers and also there are pro code developers who are well versed with packaging, etc. What are some of those considerations that you would share?
Yeah, so one of the great things about unlock packages is you, as the sort of the subscriber, you can see everything that's in it, right?
Okay.
You can modify it too,
Okay.
which is great. But one of the dangers there is you might locally modify something that came from that unlocked package,
Got it.
and then somebody goes and installs an upgrade version of the unlocked package.
Right.
Your changes will be wiped out. So that's a danger. That's one of the problems. Obviously, there's also other stuff. You talked about it earlier. You can have Apex classes in it.
Yeah.
On a production org, you're not going to be able to change those.
Right.
So you're going to have to go through either repackaging it, a new version, and then you've got the danger of overwriting stuff, or you're going to need to go down into a sandbox and you're going to need to create a change set with changes. So there are, there's some sort of pros and cons. You've got to be very, very careful to make sure that you make changes in an appropriate way. One option, of course, is to clone the metadata that you've got from the package to a new name and modify that instead. Then you're not going to lose your changes.
Right. Yeah, that's an important aspect of this is the low code developers have to be really careful because they might think that they just modified something, but it's just part of the package, and when the next release of the package happens, it can override that metadata. So they need to be mindful about that. And essentially, for most of the metadata types, I think the clone thing will work just fine. But there will be some instances of metadata where you might have to just work with your package vendor.
Absolutely. One of the nice things I would say is that for most of the metadata types, from an unlock package, you get a special icon next to it when you list it in the setup UI.
Yep.
Not everything. And unfortunately, flows is a case where you don't get an indication that it's come from a package unless you read some of the information about that flow. So you've got to be a bit careful. You could miss the fact that it's come from that package.
Awesome. Yep. All right. I think it was really great having you, Phil. And I always look forward to your profile and your answers. On Stack Exchange specifically, you work for a Salesforce ISV partner, and you share all of your learnings there and help our community. So I really want to thank you. And also, I want to thank everyone who is listening to our channel and subscribing to all of our videos. Thank you so much for subscribing to our channel and listening for all the content. So we'll keep posting new content on our channel, and we will see you soon in the next episode. Thank you so much. Goodbye.
See you.